For 3,000 years, the story of the Tower of Babel has haunted human memory, a cautionary tale of hubris, divine wrath, and fractured language. Genesis speaks of an arrogant humanity seeking to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, only to be struck down by God and scattered across the earth. But beneath the sands of modern Iraq, where the ancient city of Babylon once stood, lies a far more extraordinary reality. In March 1899, German archaeologist Robert Koldewey plunged his spades into the mounds of Hilla, 50 miles south of Baghdad. What he unearthed was not a myth born of fantasy, but the submerged foundation footprint of a colossal structure that once pierced the sky, Etemenanki, the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth. This was the true engine of the myth, a vast titan of baked brick and bitumen that dominated the ancient Near East. Through decades of archaeological detective work and deciphered cuneiform, we now know that Babel was real. It was not destroyed by a sudden strike of lightning, but forged through blood, empire, and centuries of imperial ambition. To understand the origins of the tower, one must travel back to the dawn of civilization in Sumer, 4,000 years ago. In the flat, treeless alluvial plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, stone was non-existent and timber was scarce. The early inhabitants possessed only mud and reed. Yet, through extraordinary engineering, they transformed mud into civilization. Around 2100 BC, King Yornamu of the 3rd dynasty of Yor elevated the concept of the ziggurat, a stepped mud brick pyramid serving as a cosmic ladder. To these ancient societies, the universe was divided between the heavens above and the underworld below. The ziggurat was the sacred conduit connecting both realms, a man-made holy mountain where the gods could descend to feast with mankind. As city-states vied for dominance, every great monarch sought to build higher and grander sacred mountains. The foundation of the ziggurat was not merely architectural, it was cosmic theology. When the rising star of Babylon began to eclipse its southern neighbors, its kings inherited this ancient architectural tradition, determined to build a sacred mountain that would surpass all others in human history. By the 18th century BC, a small city along the Euphrates was transformed by its brilliant 6th king, Hammurabi, into the master of Mesopotamia. He named his capital Babili, meaning the gate of the gods. Hammurabi elevated Babylon's local patron deity, Marduk, to the head of the Mesopotamian pantheon. At the city's heart sat the Asagila temple complex, and beside it, the early iteration of the Etemenanki ziggurat. Cuneiform records from Hammurabi's reign describe intense labor dedicated to enlarging the tower's base. However, Babylon's rise attracted the envy of aggressive surrounding empires. For centuries, control of Babylon and its holy tower swung widely between Kassites, Elamites, and Hittites, who repeatedly sacked the city and carried off Marduk's golden idol. Yet, despite centuries of destruction, every conqueror who seized Babylon felt compelled to rebuild the sacred tower, bound by the religious belief that whoever controlled Etemenanki possessed the mandate of heaven. The tower became the supreme political and religious symbol of power in the Near East, a prize worth dying for. In the 8th and 7th centuries BC, the brutal Assyrian Empire swept out of the north with an iron fist. Babylon, proud of its ancient cultural superiority, revolted repeatedly against Assyrian rule. In 689 BC, the ruthless Assyrian king Sennacherib decided to end Babylonian defiance forever. Sennacherib laid siege to Babylon, breached its defenses, and unleashed an apocalyptic sack. He did not merely loot the city, he systematically dismantled it brick by brick. Cuneiform inscriptions record Sennacherib's chilling boast: "The city and its houses, from foundation to parapet, I destroyed, I devastated, I burned with fire. The wall and outer wall, temples and gods, ziggurat of brick and earth, I razed and dumped into the Aratu Canal." He diverted canal waters over the shattered ruins, turning the holy metropolis into a flooded marsh. Etemenanki was reduced to a submerged pile of mud. Sennacherib believed he had erased Babylon from history. But his sacrilege horrified the ancient world, including his own court, setting off a violent sequence of events that would soon bring down Assyria itself. Assyria's brutal destruction of Babylon was short-lived. Sennacherib was assassinated by his own sons, an event seen as divine retribution by the Babylonians. His successor, Esarhaddon, terrified of Marduk's wrath, ordered the immediate restoration of Babylon and its holy tower. But it was a new native dynasty that would elevate Etemenanki to unprecedented heights. In 626 BC, Nabopolassar liberated Babylon and crushed the Assyrian Empire. His son, Nebuchadnezzar II, ascending the throne in 605 BC, initiated the greatest building campaign in antiquity. Nebuchadnezzar was obsessed with permanence. He determined that Etemenanki would never be destroyed again. He commanded millions of mud bricks to be baked in high-temperature kilns, making them as hard as natural stone, and bound together with asphalt bitumen waterproofing. Nebuchadnezzar declared in cuneiform, "To raise the top of Etemenanki so that it rivals the heavens, I mobilized dedicated labor from all corners of the earth." Babylon was transformed into the grandest metropolis on earth, and at its center, the giant began to rise again. At its peak under Nebuchadnezzar II, Etemenanki was an architectural miracle of the ancient world. It stood 91 meters, nearly 300 feet, tall, built upon a massive square base 91 meters on each side. The structure rose in 7 distinct terraced tiers, each painted in colors symbolizing the cosmic spheres, black for the underworld, white, red, blue, and capped at the 7th tier by a magnificent high sanctuary shining with brilliant cobalt blue glazed tiles and roofed in solid gold leaf. To build this titan, Nebuchadnezzar conscripted labor from every corner of his sprawling empire. Phoenicians, Elamites, Arameans, Cilicians, and captives from Judea labored side by side on its massive staircases. On the streets below, a dizzying babble of foreign tongues filled the air of the cosmopolitan capital. Once a year, during the Akitu New Year festival, the king would ascend the grand triple staircase, carrying the golden image of Marduk to the top sanctuary, where heaven and earth met in holy mystery. In 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar II sacked Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple, and forced the Judean elite into exile in Babylon. For decades, Jewish scribes lived in the shadow of Nebuchadnezzar's colossal city. To these displaced exiles, Babylon was a city of terrifying pagan power, overwhelming wealth, and intoxicating hubris. They looked up at Etemenanki, a giant man-made tower reaching toward the sky, and saw the ultimate expression of human arrogance challenging the authority of God. In the sprawling market surrounding the tower, the Judeans heard dozens of unfamiliar, foreign languages spoken by slaves and merchants brought from the ends of the empire: Akkadian, Aramaic, Elamite, Old Persian, and Greek. The forced labor on the tower's terraces, combined with the incomprehensible babel of international tongues, crystallized in the minds of the exile scribes. When writing the book of Genesis, they immortalized Etemenanki. They transformed the great Babylonian accomplishment, the foundation of heaven and earth, into a tragic story of divine judgment, the Tower of Babel, where God confused human speech to shatter man's foolish pride. The golden age of Babylon did not last. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, incorporating it into the Persian Empire. Over 2 centuries, as power shifted elsewhere, maintenance on Etemenanki faltered. When Xerxes I suppressed a Babylonian revolt, the tower suffered severe damage. By the time Alexander the Great entered Babylon in 323 BC, intending to make it the capital of his Pan-Asian Empire, Etemenanki was a crumbling ruin. Horrified by its state, Alexander deployed 10,000 Macedonian soldiers to clear the fallen mud bricks, planning to rebuild the ziggurat in unprecedented Greek splendor. But before reconstruction could begin, Alexander died suddenly in Nebuchadnezzar's palace at age 32. The cleared rubble was never replaced. Over 2 millennia, locals mined the remaining baked bricks to construct neighboring towns, reducing the legendary tower to a sunken, waterlogged depression. Yet, while the physical brick and bitumen vanished into dust, the myth survived. The real Tower of Babel was not destroyed by divine wrath, but its story remains the ultimate monument to humanity's grandest ambitions and eternal vulnerabilities.